What I'm about to tell you happened just 6 months ago, and it completely changed my life. My name is Andrew, and I thought I had the perfect marriage. 8 years with Susan, successful careers, beautiful home, the works. But sometimes, the person you trust most is the one planning to destroy everything you've built together. It all started with a simple piece of mail, an invitation that would expose a web of lies I never saw coming. By the end of this story, my wife had lost everything, and I discovered something that would change my perspective on betrayal forever. But before I tell you what happened at that reunion, let me ask you this. How well do you really know your spouse? Because I thought I knew mine, and I was dead wrong. If you've ever suspected someone close to you of lying, this story will either validate your instincts or make you question everything. Make sure you're subscribed, because you're not going to want to miss how this unfolds. Let me paint you a picture of what my marriage looked like from the outside. Susan and I were that couple everyone envied. We had matching Teslas in the driveway, a house in the suburbs that looked like it belonged in a magazine, and our Instagram was filled with pictures of romantic getaways and date nights. But here's what people didn't see behind those carefully curated posts. For the past few months, something had been off. Susan had become distant. She was always on her phone, claiming it was work, but she'd quickly close whatever she was looking at when I walked into the room. She started going out alone more often, claiming she needed space to think, or was meeting college friends I'd never heard her mention before. The intimacy in our relationship had dried up completely. We went from being that couple who couldn't keep their hands off each other to barely sharing a goodnight kiss. When I tried to talk to her about it, she'd deflect, saying she was just stressed about work or dealing with family issues. But the real red flag? She'd started working out obsessively. Now, don't get me wrong, staying healthy is great. But Susan had never been a gym person. Suddenly, she's up at 5 a.m. doing yoga, hitting the gym after work, and talking about getting back in shape. When I asked her about it, she just said she wanted to feel better about herself. I should have known something was coming. The signs were all there. But sometimes, when you love someone, you convince yourself that the obvious explanation isn't the right one. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon in October, everything changed. I was sorting through the mail when I saw it. A cream-colored envelope with gold lettering. Westfield High School, class of 2010 to 15-year reunion. Susan's reaction was immediate and telling. She practically lunged across the kitchen island to grab it from my hands. "Oh, this old thing," she said, her voice higher than usual. "I probably won't even go. You know how boring these things are. Just a bunch of people trying to relive their glory days." But here's what caught my attention. Instead of throwing it away like she normally would with junk mail, she carefully placed it in her purse. Not only that, but her hands were actually shaking as she did it. That night, I decided to do something I'd never done before in our marriage. I looked through her old yearbooks, and that's when I found him. Dave Richardson, quarterback, prom king, and according to the signatures and photos, Susan's high school boyfriend. The yearbook was full of their pictures together. Homecoming court, prom, graduation. They looked like the perfect high school power couple. I'd heard Susan mention him maybe twice in 8 years of marriage, and only in passing. "Oh, I dated someone named Dave in high school, but it was just kid stuff." That's literally all she'd ever said about him. But looking at these photos, seeing how happy they looked together, I started to wonder if maybe it hadn't been just kid stuff after all. So I did what any suspicious husband would do. I started investigating, and what I found made my blood run cold. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I had to know the truth. I started paying attention to Susan's online activity in a way I never had before. First, I noticed she'd been unusually active on social media, but not on the accounts I knew about. She created a new Instagram account that wasn't linked to her main one. Through some careful detective work, and let's just say I have some tech skills from my job, I discovered she'd been reconnecting with old classmates. But it gets worse. I found messages between her and Dave going back 3 months. 3 months of planning, flirting, and reminiscing about their amazing high school relationship. Messages like, "I've never forgotten you," and "I wonder what would have happened if we'd never broken up." The most damning message was from 2 weeks before the reunion. "I can't wait to see you again. This time, nothing's going to stop us from being together." My wife of 8 years was planning to rekindle a relationship with her high school boyfriend, and she thought I was too stupid to figure it out. But here's where it gets really interesting. I discovered that Dave had recently moved back to our city after a messy divorce. He was working a marketing firm downtown, living in a bachelor pad, and apparently, he'd been just as eager to reconnect with Susan as she was with him. That's when I realized Susan's sudden interest in fitness, her new clothes, her secretive behavior. It was all preparation for this reunion. She was getting ready to see Dave, and from the looks of their messages, she was planning to do a lot more than just catch up. But I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I had a better idea. An idea that would expose her betrayal in a way she'd never see coming. Instead of confronting Susan directly, I decided to take a different approach. I was going to attend that reunion myself, but not as Susan's husband. I was going to go undercover. Now, you might be wondering how I plan to pull this off. Here's the thing. I work in digital marketing, and one of my specialties is event photography. I reached out to the reunion planning committee and pitched them an idea. A freelance photographer who wanted to document their reunion for a magazine article about reconnecting with your past in the digital age. They loved the concept. Not only did they agree to let me photograph the event, they were actually excited about the potential publicity. The beauty of this plan was that Susan would never suspect I'd be there. As far as she knew, I believed her story about spending the evening with college friends she rarely saw. She'd even show me fake text messages from these supposed friends confirming their plans. But I had another card to play. Remember how I mentioned Dave was recently divorced? Well, I decided to reach out to his ex-wife, Amanda. And let me tell you, Amanda was more than happy to help me expose what was happening. Turns out, Dave had been cheating throughout their marriage, and Amanda suspected he was up to his old tricks again. She'd noticed his secretive behavior, his sudden interest in fitness, his excitement about the reunion. Sound familiar? Amanda and I formed an unlikely alliance. She agreed to attend the reunion as well, playing the role of the supportive ex-wife who'd moved on and wanted to stay friends. Meanwhile, I'd be there documenting everything through my camera lens. What Susan and Dave didn't know was that they were walking into a trap 6 months in the making. The reunion was scheduled for a Saturday night at the Grand Ballroom downtown. As that date approached, Susan became more and more excited, though she tried to hide it. New dress, new shoes, professional makeup, the works. On the night of the reunion, Susan kissed me goodbye and told me she'd probably be home late because you know how these college reunions can go. She even made a show of being reluctant to leave me alone for the evening. If I hadn't known better, I might have actually believed her performance. The Grand Ballroom was decorated with blue and gold streamers, class photos from 2010, and tables full of people trying to recognize each other after 15 years. I arrived early, set up my equipment, and blended in perfectly with the event staff. Susan walked in at 8:15 p.m., and I have to admit, she looked stunning. She was wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, her hair was perfectly styled, and she had this glow about her that I hadn't seen in months. But she wasn't looking for me. Why would she? As far as she knew, I was at home watching Netflix. I watched from across the room as she scanned the crowd, clearly looking for someone specific. And then I saw her face light up in a way that made my stomach drop. Dave Richardson had arrived. Even after 15 years, I could see why Susan had been attracted to him in high school. He was tall, athletic, with that confident smile that probably worked wonders in the hallways of Westfield High. He was wearing a perfectly fitted suit and had clearly put just as much effort into his appearance as Susan had. The moment they saw each other, it was like watching a movie. They embraced longer than old friends should. Their smiles were brighter than I'd seen on Susan's face in years. And when they started talking, they were standing closer than appropriate for two people who claimed to be just reminiscing. I documented everything through my camera, but more importantly, I was watching their body language. The way Susan touched his arm when she laughed. How Dave's hand lingered on her back when they walked together. The way they looked at each other during conversations with other classmates. But the real moment came around 10 p.m. when they thought they were being subtle. Dave whispered something in Susan's ear, and she nodded. They both glanced around the room, then quietly made their way toward the hotel's garden area. I followed at a distance, Amanda close behind me. She'd been playing her role perfectly all evening, making small talk with other attendees while keeping an eye on Dave's movements. What we saw in that garden confirmed everything we'd suspected. The hotel garden was dimly lit, with string lights creating an almost romantic atmosphere. Susan and Dave thought they were completely alone. I positioned myself behind a large planter where I could see and hear everything while remaining hidden. Amanda stayed near the garden entrance, ready to block their exit if needed. What I witnessed next was like watching my marriage die in real time. Dave pulled Susan close, his hands on her waist. "I've been thinking about this moment for months," he said. "I never should have let you go back then." Susan looked up at him with an expression I recognized. It was the same way she used to look at me when we first started dating. "I know," she whispered. "I've been thinking about it too. About us. About what we could have been. What we could still be." Dave corrected her, leaning down to kiss her. And she kissed him back. I watched my wife of 8 years kiss another man with more passion than she'd shown me in months. When they finally broke apart, Susan actually giggled like a teenager. "This is crazy," she said, but she was smiling. "I'm married, Dave. I shouldn't be doing this." "But you want to," he replied. "I can see it in your eyes. You're not happy with him, Susan. You haven't been happy for a while." The way she didn't deny it hit me harder than the kiss had. "Maybe we could. I don't know. Figure something out," Susan said. "Andrew doesn't have to know. We could be discreet." Dave grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that. I've got a room upstairs." That's when I decided it was time to make my presence known. Instead of bursting out in anger, I chose a different approach. I stepped out from behind the planter, my camera raised, and said in my most professional voice, "Great shot for the magazine article." Susan's face went from flushed and happy to completely white in about 2 seconds. Dave looked confused until I introduced myself. "Hi, Dave. I'm Andrew, Susan's husband. Thanks for helping me get all the evidence I needed for the divorce proceedings." The silence that followed was deafening. What happened next was better than any confrontation scene in a movie. Susan started stammering, trying to explain that it wasn't what it looked like, that they were just catching up, that the kiss didn't mean anything. But her voice was shaking, and even she didn't sound convinced by her own words. Dave, meanwhile, was looking around like he was trying to find an escape route. "Look, man, I didn't know she was... she said things weren't going well between you two." "Oh, so Susan told you our marriage was in trouble?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "Interesting, because she never mentioned that to me. In fact, just this morning she was talking about our anniversary plans next month." That's when Amanda stepped forward. "Hello, Dave," she said sweetly. "Fancy seeing you here." Dave's face went even paler. "Amanda? Why are you here?" "Oh, Andrew and I have been working together for months," she said casually, "comparing notes about our cheating spouses. It's been quite enlightening." Susan looked back and forth between Amanda and me, finally starting to realize how thoroughly she'd been outmaneuvered. But I wasn't done yet. "Susan," I said, reaching into my jacket pocket, "remember how all of our major assets are in my name because of your credit issues from college? The house, the cars, your business accounts?" Her face went even whiter. "Well, I've been busy this week. I've already filed for divorce, changed all the passwords, and had your belongings moved to your sister's garage. The locks on the house have been changed too." Susan's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You can't just kick me out of my own home." "Actually, I can," I replied. "Because it's not your home. It's my home. You're not on the deed. Remember? We decided to keep things simple for tax purposes." Dave was backing away slowly. "Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. I didn't know things were this complicated." "Oh, but they're about to get less complicated," I said. "Susan, I hope you and Dave have a wonderful life together. You're both free to pursue whatever this is without any interference from me." The look of panic on both their faces was priceless. Because suddenly, their secret affair wasn't secret anymore, and the fantasy of sneaking around had become the reality of public exposure and real consequences. What happened next was exactly what you'd expect from two people who'd built their affair on fantasy rather than reality. Dave suddenly wasn't interested in pursuing anything with Susan once he realized it would mean dealing with divorce drama, financial complications, and social consequences. Within 24 hours, he'd blocked her number and social media accounts. Susan found herself with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. Her friends, who learned about the affair through social media, because yes, I did share some of those photos I'd taken, weren't particularly sympathetic. Her family was disappointed, and her lover had vanished the moment things got complicated. Meanwhile, Amanda and I had actually become friends through this whole process. What started as a mutual support system during our respective divorces had grown into something genuine and unexpected. 6 months later, I ran into Amanda at a coffee shop. We've been talking regularly as we both worked through our divorces and rebuilt our lives. You know what's funny? She said, stirring her latte. Their betrayal actually led us to find something real. She was right. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you ends up being the best thing that could have happened. Susan? Last I heard, she was working retail and living with her parents, still trying to understand how her perfect plan had backfired so spectacularly. Dave moved to another city, apparently unable to handle the social fallout from his actions. Here's what I learned from this whole experience. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a dramatic confrontation or trying to hurt someone back. Sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away and building something better. The person who betrays you thinks they're taking something from you, but really, they're just revealing their own character while giving you the opportunity to find someone who actually deserves your trust. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you're subscribed because I have more incredible stories of betrayal, revenge, and justice coming your way. And remember, sometimes the people we trust most are the ones we should be watching most carefully. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.